Hello and welcome back to the GCP-Mindset channel. Today, we're diving into a vital but often behind-the-scenes role in clinical research, the Trial Master File Manager. If you've ever heard the phrase, if it's not in the TMF, it didn't happen, then you already know how important this job is. But what exactly is the TMF, and what does a TMF manager actually do?
Welcome to the GCP-Mindset channel and all topics on clinical research.
Let us start with understanding what the Trial Master File is. The Trial Master File, or TMF for short, is the foundation of any clinical trial. It's the central repository of all essential documents that show how a clinical trial was planned, conducted, monitored, and managed. It helps ensure that trials are conducted in line with good clinical practice, that participant rights are protected, and that the data collected is credible and reliable. Regulatory authorities, such as the European Medicines Agency and the FDA, rely on the TMF when conducting audits and inspections. It must always be ready for review and must accurately reflect the entire story of a trial. TMFs can exist in several formats: paper-based, fully electronic, what we call eTMFs, or a hybrid of both. A short note, nowadays most TMFs are of course managed electronically. This has become absolutely established over the last 10 years. Let us now move to the role of the TMF manager. The TMF manager is the person who ensures that this massive collection of documentation is accurate, complete, organized, and compliant at every stage of the trial. While the sponsor holds the ultimate accountability for TMF content, they often hire TMF managers, or CROs, which provide TMF services to ensure the file is inspection-ready and well-maintained from start to finish. You can think of the TMF manager as a compliance gatekeeper. If any issues arise during an audit or inspection, the TMF will be the first place investigators look. So, it's not just about filing documents. It's about recording the entire study in a way that justifies decisions, proves compliance, and protects both participants and data integrity. Let's walk through what a TMF manager does before a clinical trial begins. Before the first patient is enrolled, the TMF must be established correctly and populated with key documents. This includes the investigator brochure and associated receipt forms, which contain detailed information about the investigational product, its composition, pharmacology, potential risks, and benefits. Investigators must sign off to confirm that they've received and understood this information. Signed protocols and any amendments must also be included. These documents outline the study's objectives, methodology, and procedures, and any modifications must be documented to ensure proper tracking and regulatory approval. Then we have the informed consent forms. These are critical for participant rights and ethical compliance, and they must clearly communicate the purpose of the study, potential risks, and benefits, allowing participants to make informed decisions. Additionally, all necessary regulatory approvals and agreements must be filed before the trial begins. This includes ethics committee approvals, approvals from competent authorities, financial agreements, and insurance documentation. These documents clarify compensation for participants, investigator payments, and define the responsibilities of sponsors, institutions, vendors, and investigators. Laboratory documentation must also be present. Certificates, accreditation records, and standard procedures confirm the quality and reliability of laboratory testing. Shipment records, sample labels, and decoding procedures ensure investigational products are handled correctly, especially in blinded trials. Finally, pre-trial monitoring reports need to be included. These verify that the site is ready to begin and compliant with good clinical practice standards. Next, let us explore what the TMF manager does during the clinical trial. Once the study is underway, the TMF must be continuously updated with new documents and revisions. For example, if new safety data emerges about the investigational product, the investigator brochure must be updated to reflect these changes. Revisions to protocols, consent forms, agreements, and regulatory approvals may be needed, and these must also be approved by ethics committees and competent authorities before implementation. If new investigators join the study, their CVs and qualifications need to be documented. Any updates from laboratories, such as new procedures or changes to reference ranges, must also be tracked. There's ongoing work to manage investigational product documentation, such as shipment records, quality control checks, and inventory logs. Monitoring visit reports must capture site visits, any deviations, and corrective actions taken. And any significant changes to protocol, safety updates, or procedural adjustments must be clearly recorded and filed. Let us start with understanding what the Trial Master File is. The Trial Master File, or TMF for short, is the foundation of any clinical trial. It's the central repository of all essential documents that show how a clinical trial was planned, conducted, monitored, and managed. It helps ensure that trials are conducted in line with good clinical practice, that participant rights are protected, and that the data collected is credible and reliable. Regulatory authorities, such as the European Medicines Agency and the FDA, rely on the TMF when conducting audits and inspections. It must always be ready for review and must accurately reflect the entire story of a trial. TMFs can exist in several formats: paper-based, fully electronic, what we call eTMFs, or a hybrid of both. A short note, nowadays most TMFs are of course managed electronically. This has become absolutely established over the last 10 years. Let's continue with the responsibilities after a trial is completed. After a trial concludes, the TMF must be finalized with all remaining documentation to ensure transparency and regulatory compliance. One major area of focus is product accountability. The final product log records the distribution and final use or destruction of the investigational product, and certificates of destruction confirm that any unused products have been properly disposed of. Audit-related documentation must also be filed. This includes certificates from any inspections, as well as close-out monitoring reports that summarize final site visits, compliance checks, and any outstanding issues. We also need to ensure that treatment allocation and decoding procedures are properly filed into the TMF, especially for blinded or randomized trials, so that the integrity of the study is maintained. Let us now talk about the essential skills for a TMF manager. Being a TMF manager requires more than organizational skills. It demands deep regulatory knowledge, the ability to work across international teams, and familiarity with clinical trial phases and product types. A TMF manager must understand ICH GCP guidelines, regional regulations like EMA or FDA rules, and how they apply across different studies. On the technical side, proficiency with electronic document management systems is essential. A TMF manager must also be able to support audits and inspections, coordinate with CROs, sites, and sponsors, and stay on top of real-time filing to avoid documentation backlogs. And finally, let us look at the challenges that TMF managers face. There are plenty of challenges in this role. Keeping the TMF inspection ready at all times is no small feat. As a TMF manager, you're often dealing with multiple stakeholders, different filing habits, and documentation that's being generated across time zones and countries. There's always the risk of missing or duplicated documents, which can create major issues during an audit. The TMF must reflect the trial in real time. If something's delayed or misfiled, it can lead to findings that jeopardize the entire study. That's why meticulous attention to detail, proactive communication, and a strong understanding of regulatory expectations are all essential in this job. The Trial Master File Manager plays a critical role in every phase of a clinical trial. It's a behind-the-scenes job, but without it, studies would lack the documentation needed to pass inspections, prove compliance, or even justify their results. So if you're detail-oriented, organized, and passionate about clinical research, this could be the perfect role for you. Remember, in this line of work, if it's not in the TMF, it didn't happen. Thanks for tuning in, and stay curious about the people and processes that make clinical research work. Until next time.